episode of Debating Metal. I'm your host, Kenneth Dean, the Dean of Metal, along with my co-host, Chris K. And this week, we're going head-to-head with a couple of classics for you as we pit Dokken's second album, Tooth and Nail, versus Ratt's full-length debut, Out of the Cellar.
These two bands came out of the early 80s glam scene and quickly became MTV darlings when that actually meant something. While both albums went platinum, only one can come out on top tonight as we break down each album song by song to see which one we think is better.
And as a reminder to you all, if you like what you hear today, click on the subscribe button and we'll give you a new episode each week so you can hear our most valued opinions on some of your favorite heavy metal bands. And this week, it's Dokken versus Ratt, Ratt versus Dokken, Tooth and Nail versus Out of the Cellar. It's basically two classic glam metal albums from the 80s going head to head. They both came out the same year, and I think that's one of the reasons that's the biggest reason why I picked these two albums, because they both came out in '84, and both of these albums went platinum or multi-platinum, depending on which album we're talking about. And they just really were all over the airwaves, all over MTV, and this was a big year for glam metal. So
I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the glam scene. It's something that, you know, if I hear some songs from that time period, I don't tend to switch them. But at the same time, I don't own a lot of these albums, so this is a new experience for me. Specifically listening to these two albums in their entirety, I had never heard them before. I've heard select songs off of them. But the glam scene is something that it was before my time, essentially, being born in '86. So, most of the music that I was privy to was, the start of the grunge era, '90s metal, like stuff like Metallica, etc., where bands were hanging on, and it wasn't until later, a little bit later in my life, that I got into some of these bands. But yeah, it was an interesting experiment, I would say.
Well, I mean, it's a better experiment than or a better experience. Let's put it that way. Better experience this week than you had last week, I'm assuming.
Sure.
After last week's metalcore episode,
you'd be surprised. So.
Well, no, I mean, look, there's obviously there's good things about everything that we listen to, and there's always something good to take away from it, even though there's certain parts of it that we may or may not like.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I mentioned last week, I found several things to like in the music, even though it wasn't really my thing, and I will probably do so today, but I'm not going to spoil anything.
All right, so. I'm going to go ahead and go first because Out of the Cellar, I'm going to lead with Out of the Cellar from Ratt, and that was released earlier in the year. So Dokken came out later in the year. So that is we'll go with that timeline. And just a brief little history on Ratt. Basically, they had debuted. Well, they had been part of the LA metal glam scene for a while. Couple years at this point, and they put out their own independent EP in 1983 called Ratt. It had 6 songs on it. It got picked up by Atlantic Records, and they re-released it. Actually, they remastered it, and then re-released it, and they kind of repackaged it a little bit. They changed the back cover. They changed the picture of the band. The picture was more something that was associated with Out of the Cellar era Ratt than the original Ratt that came out on that first album. But then when it got picked up, they basically Atlantic Records basically said, all right, well, let's go ahead and get into the studio. Let's put out your first full-length record. That is what we have here. Out of the Cellar came out March 27th, 1987. It's produced by Beau Hill, and it was released, as I said, on Atlantic Records, and it was recorded at the Village Recorder and Sound City Studios in Los Angeles, California. And for those of you who may or may not know, the cover is graced by the late Tawny Katane, as she was a friend of the band's, and she also appeared on the original Ratt EP. Those are her legs with the little mouse next to them. So,
Wasn't she? Am I mistaken? Wasn't she in a relationship with Robin
Crosby?
Crosby?
Maybe she was. I don't know. Well, I mean, it was only a few years later that she was in a relationship with David Coverdale, but I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah, Crosby was dating actress Tawny Katane, who would go on to appear in several Whitesnake videos at the time he joined Ratt, and she appears on the cover, like you said, of Ratt EP and Out of the Cellar. And then she went on to, date Coverdale.
Appear on the hood of Coverdale's car.
If that's how you want to put it.
Yep, just saying. All right, so this album, what do we got here? 10 songs, I think we got.
Yep, both albums are 10 songs. Both albums are
10 songs. All right, cool. So let's start it off with Ratt's first song here on this album, Wanted Man. It's an interesting way to start an album. It had backwards drums that intro the beginning of the song. Actually, the backwards drums ends the song too, which is a unique way. But it starts off with backward drums or backward drumming, or they flip the tape basically. It's got a cool little catchy riff to start off with, and once it hits that riff, then once the chorus starts, it slows down to a kind of a quiet, clean guitar that slowly builds as the verse goes on, and then gets into the chorus. It's a catchy chorus. I mean, I like the song a lot. The solo's pretty good. It's catchy. It's a little memorable, and I like how it interplays with the chorus after it comes in with the rest of the song, or throughout the rest of the song, after the solo's over.
I don't recall if you mentioned. You said it was the second single off the album?
I did not, but it is the second single off the album.
Gotcha. So the highlight for me is definitely the solo. I think the main riff being broken up by, some of the softer guitar strums has kind of a cooler effect. I guess it was supposed to be kind of a Western theme, as went with the video. The vocals, man, they're just so middling. It's no offense to anybody that likes Stephen Pearcy's vocals, but I think at this point in his career, at least towards the end of the song, he's hitting some higher notes to kind of vary things up, but he just kind of stays right there in the middle, which is something that happens a lot through this album.
He found a pocket and didn't want to leave.
He did.
I get that.
He did not ever want to leave. He wanted to stay there for the rest of his career.
I mean, granted, give the guy the benefit of the doubt in that regards, that, he at least knew his lane and did not decide he wanted to stretch out of it because he knew he was not going to excel at that. So I give him credit for that. He doesn't seem like he had the strongest voice in terms of, screaming and yelling or having that 80s wail that a lot of other singers had especially coming out of the LA glam scene. So he didn't have the voice like Dokken. He didn't have the voice like, what's his face? Vince Neil. So he stayed in his lane, and I like that.
Vince Neil didn't even have the voice like Vince Neil because he sounded different on every album.
That's true, but he could scream.
Yeah.
That was the one thing, he could scream. Who's that? That's Vince Neil. Is it really? All right, song number 2, You're in Trouble. Okay, so I don't know. It starts off with something like a jungle sound or a zoo sound or something. It's kind of weird. Then it just has this bass and drum intro, that starts off the song, comes in a little short solo, and then boom, the verse. Okay, that works. What I do like about Ratt, and what I like about Stephen Pearcy, regardless of his vocal limitations, is that he does have a really good mind for melody, and he does have some really good vocal lines throughout the album, throughout the career, really, and so he's got a very melodic voice, and he has a very good way of writing those melodies into his vocal lines. I give him that, but again, the limitations of his voice can only get you so far, but that's fine. He's made a great career. It's got a really catchy pre-chorus on here, and the chorus is also catchy. So you got a simple bridge that leads into the guitar solo where Hey Hey is chanted at the beginning of it, and then the solo fits, but for the most part, it's nothing to write home about.
I mean, I like the solo. I thought it was pretty good. It starts off with kind of this bass focus. Like, I guess that's what you're mentioning when you say the jungle sound.
No, I'm talking like there was like a little actual like weird sound at the beginning.
Okay.
And then the bass and drums come in. It's got some funky bass.
So I get what you're saying. Okay, so there's the bass playing, but there's this kind of underlying vocal, not chanting or anything, but like there's this noise. That's the best way I can put it. So I know what you're talking about. The vocals are a little better here. You mentioned like he melodic. What I would say is he's kind of bending the notes a bit, which is a little bit more dynamic than what we heard on Wanted Man. It's another kind of simple as can be riff, but it works and it's fine.
I mean, what I'm trying to get at with Piercy is he does have like, I mean, I'm pretty, they break this down as the whole band arranges the songs, but someone is the songwriter, and that's pretty dominantly Warren DeMartini, Robin Crosby, and Stephen Piercy does probably most of the lyrics, if not all the lyrics, and maybe adds a little bit of music to it. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure Piercy's the one that's writing all the lyrics, so he's the one coming up with the melody lines, and I think they come out. They're catchy. I mean, this whole album is catchy. Is it great? Well, it's sold. It's great to some people, but I think it's all really built on the power of this next song, which is Round and Round. That's the single. That's the song of the franchise. That's the way. I mean, if it's not for this song, Ratt doesn't exist. If it's not for this song, Ratt's no longer around. Okay, you could have this album, take this album out. This is not a 3 million selling album without that song. The song is really, really catchy. It's got a cool melody line, got a catchy chorus. The solo is pretty cool. What I like a lot about the solo is that it actually goes into a harmony part that makes the solo even better. And and it's famous for its video. It's famous for its commercial that came out on Geico just a few years ago. So it's like I said, it is the song of the franchise.
I mean, it's like you said, the lead-off single from the album. I think if you've heard any classic rock radio, you've probably heard this song. The main riff's pretty great, and it's an iconic, opening riff, which is repeated. So it goes throughout the song, binding it together. The solo is definitely one of the best on the album. You mentioned the harmony part, which, yeah, it's great. This is, if there's any song, like there's a lot of bands that are one-hit wonders, and they have one song that's absolutely great. Not saying that Ratt is, but what I'm saying is like, this is one of those songs that if they never wrote any other song, they could persevere off of this track. So it is Absolutely. It is the highlight of the album.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, without this song, this album really isn't that platinum selling. It might be, it might go gold or something like that because it's got other good songs on it. But as being like a 3 million platinum, it's built on this song.
And sometimes that's all it takes.
Exactly. I mean, you mentioned something about one hit wonder, and in reality, if you go up to someone today and you ask them, what do you think of this band, and play Round and Round, they're gonna instantly pick up on it. You play any other song from Ratt, and they're not gonna know who it is. And that's not to take away from them because they had hits. because their greatest hits, 81 to 91 album that came out, I mean, it's loaded with hits. I mean, it's one of those greatest hits albums that they literally just did the singles, the hits, the good songs, and it's a great album. Like, if anybody ever wants to get a Ratt album, that is the album to get, because it has everything on it up until I think Detonator, and that really is at that point all that matters. So, but anyway, we get back to this album. In Your Direction is the next song. I like the intro riff. The song itself builds nicely. The verse riff changes the song a little bit. And the verse it's all right for me. I mean, overall, this song feels like a filler song for me. And what it really comes down to is this song to me is flat. There's no energy behind it. There's no motivation to it. But oddly enough, the song, when it gets to the solo, it changes. It becomes a little bit more energetic. It changes the beat. It changes the rhythm. And then it kind of goes back to the main thing that was flat to begin with. So it's a weird song. The best part of the song is the solo. And it's not that great of a solo to begin with. It's just the solo section is better.
I mean, I would disagree as far as the solo goes. I actually do like Ratt's solos. I think Robin Crosby was a really great player. And Warren DeMartini, I had seen him do a couple things where it was just him playing, and I wasn't like super impressed, but I could tell he was like, he's impressive. Don't get me wrong. I can't play guitar. That's a whole nother world than I live in. But as far as comparatively to some of the other guitar players, which I really follow, he never blew me away. But hearing them in the context of the songs, that was one thing that I picked up on that I actually really did like throughout this album. But this song, it solely relies on this "In Your Direction" line, and it's so basic. Like, all he says is "in your direction" with some backing vocals on it. That's supposed to be the hook. It's miserable. Like, I vow to never listen to this song for the rest of my life. I hate it so much. At least it had the solo in it.
Wow, that is a strong statement to say that you vow to never listen to this song again. That's awesome. Like I said, the song is flat to me. I mean, the best part of the solo, or the best part of the song, is the solo section. The solo, put it this way, okay, all their solos are cool. DeMartini and Crosby are very good guitar players, and I'm not taking anything away from anybody who is actually a professional musician who actually makes money on this and goes out there, because everyone bags on Lars Ulrich. Yeah, we get it. But guess what? He's a professional drummer. He gets on stage every single night and brings it. Okay, it may not be the way you want it to hear, as far as, it's not a Dave Lombardo. It's not, any of those great drummers, but he is what Metallica is. And so he plays. He is a professional drummer. He gets paid a lot of money to play drums. And so do these guys. Not as much anymore. But, I like Crosby and DeMartini. I think DeMartini is pretty cool. I always liked his look that he had, and he played well, and he backed it up. There's other things that are unfortunate with the whole situation, but let's move on, because this was a really song. Song number 5, which ends side 1, is She Wants Money. The energy comes back on this up-tempo rocker. Absolutely much better song. It's got a real catchy riff that mimics the chorus. That's pretty cool. And then it's very nice and melodic. The chorus is anthemic, almost call and response-ish. So I think this song is a much better direction that they're going in.
I mean, it had a nice opening riff.
That's
The song sucks. Okay, so the lyrics are terrible. I don't know what else to say. Like, she wants money. That's great. Okay.
I gotta say that the lyrics the lyrics for a lot of the songs on this album aren't great. They don't get any better on
this one for sure.
Yeah, no, there are some that are better. But as a whole, lyrically, Stephen Pearcy's not the most profound and deep lyricist that's out there, and the albums in the future don't get much better lyrically. I think there's one album that gets a little bit more mature. I believe that's Dancing Undercover, but other than that, it's Ratt. It's glam metal, So what can you expect? Motley Crue wasn't much deeper either.
No, but somehow better.
Yes, somehow better. Absolutely. But there's a lot more to it than just that.
Yeah.
All right, so we flip the album over and we go to side 2. And side 2 starts off with the song Lack of Communication. I love this riff. I mean, this is a really cool song. And it's funny because I've listened to this song hundreds of times. And, I have lots of good things to say about the song. It's a relatively simple song. The verses are melodic. I like how the chorus, it's a little different style of songwriting as far as the song structure is concerned, because literally the chorus is after each and every verse. Like almost part of the verse. And then it has a bridge that leads into an extremely short. So I think it beats Shadows Fall's 10-second solo from the last episode we did.
Yeah, I guess. It's short. I did note that.
I'm thinking no more than 5 seconds on this solo. I didn't time it because I ran out of time to when I was looking at it. So that's the thing I was trying to get at, though, when I was saying I've listened to this song countless times, 100 times, whatever it is. I never realized how short that solo was until tonight. And the song, just listening to the fact that the solo was so short, everything changed for me on this song. This is a great song. And then the fact that the solo is so short really does this song a disservice. I think this song could have been bigger, huge, if it had a solo in it. What do you feel about this song?
So the opening riff is all right. It's got a lot of the heavy gang vocals, which kind of gives it a unique, kind of cool vibe at moments. And there's some varied tones in the vocals, which is also kind of unique because there's a lot, like I said, where he stays kind of at one place. But this wasn't bad. I think okay. I'm in agreement with you. Like a longer solo would be nice. It's one of the singles. I feel like if it did have a solo, comparative to maybe Round and Round, something along those lines, it would have been a bigger single.
Yeah, I mean, if you, because they're talented enough, DeMartini and Crosby, they put a great solo throughout some of the songs on this album, and this is obviously specifically we're pointing at Round and Round as well, and to sit there and have this song, which pretty much kicks ass in my opinion, to not have a solo, it could have kicked more ass, if you want to put it that way. It could have kicked a bigger ass. It could have driven this to maybe 4 or 5 times platinum. And it's weird to say it that way, how one little section of a song could do that. But a lot of times it's part of that song that makes it memorable. Whereas this thing goes into, it goes like off. And then it literally goes into a 5-second solo and it goes back into the chorus. And it's like, but it's because it's so fast, it almost feels like it's rushing through as opposed to letting the solo come in, kind of give everybody a pause and then, go on. So that's where not having a solo or having a very minute solo is detracting from the song. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we move on. Song number 7 on the album is Back for More. All right, so this song is unique for Ratt in ways. This is a re-recorded version of a song that appeared on their first EP, the Ratt EP. It has an acoustic intro. I think it's pretty cool, but it has some really hard hitting chords that kind of complement the acoustics part of it. And then it goes into this, waltzy kind of verse, which is kind of cool, and it's almost it's not dissonant, but there's a lot of stuff going on. The bass he's plucking away. The drums got a funky little beat going on. And the reason I say I pick on the bass in this one is that what I like about this song is that the original mix or the original version of the song. So I'm going to say this is a re-recorded version, but I can't be for certain. It could be that they just took the tapes and remixed it. I'm not sure. But the original that came out on the EP, I like that mix a lot better. It's a lot more raw. And because of that, you hear the bass being plucked and it has this like one note that literally like flies off the song. And it's just like out of nowhere, you hear this weird note that gets plugged. I think I like that part of it. But, that's most people are not going to know that there's another version of it. But overall, I think the song is pretty cool. I believe it should have been a single. It wasn't necessarily a promoted single, but I do think it got picked up by some people. Well, what's your opinion on this song?
I mean, I was familiar with it. I had heard it like on the radio and stuff before. So I've actually heard it more than some of the other singles that were on the album. Let's be honest. I'd be fine if they weren't back for more at this point. But jokes aside, it's an all right riff. It's got a memorable vocal melody, which is unique because most of them there's not really vocal melody. It's just him staying at one note. So melody, I'm happy to hear it. And it's got another nice solo. I agree with you. I think this probably should have been a single as well, because it's one of the stronger songs on the album.
Okay, yeah, it's definitely it's one of the songs I think they should have done something more with it, but it is what it is at this point. What are we talking? 28 years down the road?
Yeah, they can release it as a single now.
38 years down the road.
So they can release it as a single now.
Well, yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, they give some money to the estate, the Robbins estate. All right. The next song, The Morning After, song number 8 on the album. I like the intro riff. I like that cool galloping riff that it starts off with. The song starts off really well. It's got a melodic verse on it. The chorus is relatively simple, but it's catchy. There's something that they almost kind of overproduced the vocals on this one a little bit. It's very, very. The whole song feels kind of compressed, but it's also seems like the song itself was recorded and arranged in a higher key. I don't know if I'm talking out of my ass here or not. Just something weird about the song, even though it's got a cool riff. And the funny thing about this song is that, right going into the solo, Steven says, "Say bye." Like, see ya. I'm out of here. I'm not going to be part of you. Because apparently the girl in the story is kind of like some model of some sort, and he's just like dumping her. And it's just a weird, I don't know, weird dynamic on the song. What do you think?
He's trying to be a high profile man, or high value man. I wrote down that I liked the galloping pace as well. It's overall good. Some harmony vocals kind of helped it for me. as a whole, one of the better tracks on the album, I would say, with one of the better solos. Like this solo, had they put it in, Back for More or Lack of Communication, probably would have been helpful. But I ended up liking this song more than a lot of the others, to be honest.
Yeah, the solo is kind of cool, and it has the harmony part towards the end of the solo where both guys are playing together. So that's the one thing that I really, I think,
I wish they had done more of. Yeah,
I wish they had done more of it, and then not just on this album in general. I mean, you see all these guitar players that are dual leads. We talked about it. We had a big four about it, a few weeks back. It's one of these things where bands really need to do that because it's something that really is attractive to the ear, and it's attractive to the listener, and those are the kinds of things that bring people in. Queensryche is famous for that. Striper's famous for that. And then just having a song here and there when you have two such strong guitar players. And that's the other thing too. Like you don't hear a lot of solos trading off back and forth. Like when you have two lead guitar players, you normally have like two solos or at least two sections, and you don't get that a lot out of this. And I think that's one of the downsides to Ratt in this particular case. But anyway,
I thought maybe because
on.
This was such an early album that maybe that was part of that, but. If you're saying they didn't really ever develop into it, wow.
Not that I know of, and they had. I mean, so put it this way, I like Ratt. When this album came out, and then the next album came out after, they did three. They did so they did the EP. So they had a bunch of records consecutively in the 80s, and they had this one in 84. So they had the EP. In 83, the 84, then they got Invasion of Your Privacy in 85, Dancing Undercover in 86, which came out late 86. So then they literally took a year or so off or whatever, and they released Reach for the Sky in 88, and then a couple years later, Detonator. I don't recall them getting that much more mature to be able to do those kinds of things and do two solos or extended solos. I don't recall that. So I think they kept the youthful exuberance on Invasion of Your Privacy. I think they got a little bit more mature on Dancing Undercover because the song Bodytalk, I believe, ended up being in an Eddie Murphy movie. Reach for this. I think it didn't do as well as they expected it to do, especially with the fact that it was in that one song was in the movie. So they ended up taking some time off after a tour. Reach for the Sky came out a couple years later. Again, I don't think there was a lot of advancement in the songwriting structures that they had, but I could be wrong. Maybe we'll follow this up next week, and I'll let you know I was wrong or I was right. Anyway. The next song is I'm Insane, song number 9. Cool little chugging intro riff. Got another nice vocal melody, catchy chorus, a little up-tempo. The title of the song, though, it's pretty cool. It acts like a bridge right before the solo. They change it up a little bit right there as they create a bridge, but they use the title of the song and part of the chorus as part of the bridge. I think the solo is pretty cool on this particular song. It's kind of a short song, so it comes and goes just as fast as you hear it.
So it was featured in the Mickey Rourke film The Wrestler, along with Round and Round, and it has a decent riff. It reminds me a little bit like if Ultimate Warrior had gone and wrestled in the Indies or something, he could have used this as his theme song. It has another good solo, but it's pretty unremarkable otherwise.
Okay, now the last song on the album is the song Scene of the Crime. That nice harmony intro with a melody to it. again, more melodic verses. That's an interesting story in the lyrics. But the song, this song doesn't hold up to today's standards because of the way that the chorus uses the word bitch in it. So it's not like it would get a lot of radio airplay or it would even be added to an album nowadays. But back then, that was not a big deal.
Pretty fine on a gangsta rap album.
Yeah, gangsta rap. This isn't gangsta LA glam. Gangsta glam. And it's weird. So the song, however, ends very similarly to how it begins. But they made a strange choice. Instead of ending the song, outright, they actually fade it out. So it's kind of weird because it picks up on the same kind of harmony parts at the beginning, and then it just decides it wants to fade out, as opposed to ending the song like the opposite of how it begins. So I found that to be a strange choice. What do you think?
So we're finally at the finish line and the scene of the crime. Who can I arrest for making me sit through this?
That would be me.
It's all right. I would say it's, boring at best, middling first solo, but the second solo in harmony is much better. It's pretty good. I'm glad this is over.
All right, so here's my synopsis on this thing here. And you're going to disagree with me to this. There is a lot to like on this album, but it's more like flashes in the pan than it is an overall cohesive unit. It has its faults. It has its shortcomings. We've expressed the shortcomings of Stephen Pearcy's vocals. We've expressed the songwriting styles that they've chosen and not doing things that actually would appeal to other people in using the skills that they have. Amazingly enough, this album went on to sell 3 million copies. And that, to me, is totally due on the fact that they had the two singles that were on MTV, Wanted Man and Round and Round. And Round is just enormous. It's huge. It's a giant song. And it's still around today. That's how big of a song it is, was, and will ever be. Because it just has that staying power. But as overall, the album itself is built on the strength of 3, maybe 4 songs and some catchy riffs. It's not something to me that is going to be, I don't think it's their best album, but it's 3 million seller. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, it blows me away that it sold as much as it did, but there are a lot of albums out there that go based on the strength of one single. And, there's bands that, put out a song that's not even indicative of their typical style, and it'll sell like crazy, and people go, "Oh my God, they don't sound anything like this one single I like." But that's what happens. So, it's a matter of good timing sometimes. It's a matter of a good push from MTV at the time, etc. So, it sold what it sold, and power to them. But I gotta say, after listening to this album, I hate Ratt. More and more than ever. And I gotta say, Stephen Pearcy is a big part of that. His bland, soulless vocals, just kill anything good for me. So you kind of made the observation that, like, and this was us talking separately, that in a bubble, that each song is fine, and it really is in a way. Like, if you listen to one of these songs at a time, the vocals aren't really a problem. It's when you put it all together that it starts to really bother me. It becomes very samey. And, I got to go back to what I said earlier. The guitars, the lead guitars from both Warren DeMartini and Robin Crosby are very enjoyable. They could push it a little further. Like you mentioned, it would be nice to have more of those harmony guitar parts. I'm not sure why they chose not to do that, but the moments that they did were very good. So it's not all bad, and I'm joking a lot here, obviously, but I have to be honest. Like I'd be fine if I've never heard Ratt again in my life. And it Round and Round. Don't get me wrong, it's a great song, and I'm completely fine with it. Here's the twist, though. I'm looking for my big four tracks. I did go through all the albums trying to find, at least listening to the singles, and going through and trying to find something that I enjoyed, and it was hard. Don't get me wrong, it really, for me, it was not super fun. But when we get to my big four, you might be surprised by some of the songs I picked, and I was able to find some stuff that I actually did enjoy.
There you go. Well, that's good. Like we talked about, In a Bubble, yes. And it's funny because when you do that and you take a song individually, you listen, look at Round and Round in particular. You listen to a song like that, it's kind of like almost exciting. It's a cool song. It's got all these great elements to it. Harmony, melody, everything. And then there's other times you listen to, you'll hear Wanted Man. It's not a up-tempo song. So what is it that's catchy? Well, what is it about it that people like? Well, it's catchy. It's melodic. It's all the things that you want to hear in a song to some degree, but it's slower. Lack of communication has a lot of those good elements, and so, it's a faster song. It's more up-tempo. But when you put them all together in the same line, then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, the line goes up and down, but it stays in a very, very limited range. And so that when you're listening to it over and over and over again, because you're trying to review an album, then you see like, oh yeah, it's very monotonous. So
I don't feel like they were trying to write an album. I just feel like they were trying to write songs. And, that's how it works with a lot of bands, and then they end up finding some cohesion, etc. But that's kind of the way I felt about it as I was listening to it. This was not an album. One song was not dependent on another. There was nothing that really said this all links together in some way. They were just a bunch of songs that were thrown on there, all trying to hit the center of the dartboard. Trying to hit a hit. And
I just to kind of hit something on what you're saying. A lot of debut albums, because essentially that's what this is. It's a full length. Usually have a lot of songs that have been written over time, that have been practiced in front of an audience or been premiered in front of an audience and played. Obviously, Guns N' Roses is a big example. And this band, unlike other bands that kind of have this ability to kind of grow into their songwriting, they hit it out of the park with Round and Round right off the bat, and it kind of I think in hindsight it kind of stunted them. They put out this album because they got picked up by a major label, but the major label picked them up on 6 songs. That was probably the max that they had, finished.
Yeah.
And all this, because that's what they put out. So now they're doing club shows, probably on the strength of 10 songs, and 4, like one of the songs on the EP was a cover. So go figure, And now you get pushed in the studio. Okay, come up with an album. I was like, oh shit. Now what? This is what they got. They hit gold. I say hit gold, but they hit pay dirt and got 3 million Cellar. So, good for them.
Absolutely.
The next album went double platinum, and the next album after that went platinum. So they had good songs, but all those albums were based on the one single or one or two
diminishing
singles.
Returns. I mean,
right.
there's you can't tell me that Saint Anger sold as well as it did because it's a great album. You can tell me that it's sold as well as it did because of the strength of Metallica's name.
I'm telling you it's sold because of how good it is. I'm telling you, you're listening to me, you're hearing it.
You're fired.
All right. Okay, well, that's enough for Ratt for now. We're going to get back to them a little bit later. We're going to turn it over to Dokken now. And Dokken, little bit different kind of band, but it's still in the 80s glam metal scene out of LA. This is their second album. First album was Breaking the Chains, and then they had a small hit in the United States with Breaking the Chains. They had some European success as well because the album came out there in Europe before it came out here in the States. But this album, Tooth and Nail, is pretty much what put Dokken on the map. This album came out September 14th, 1984. It was produced by Tom Werman. It was released on Elektra Records and recorded at Cherokee Studios in Hollywood, California. Tom Werman would become a big name in the 80s for some of these really popular glam metal records that came out. And so that is a very wealthy man himself. All right. You want to go ahead and take the lead on this one?
Yes, sir. So one thing I wanted to mention that there is a bit of a connection between Ratt and Dokken, and that's that Juan Crozier, the bassist from Breaking the Chains, left Dokken to join Ratt, and this was the first album without him. So there is that interesting little connection there.
That's right. I forgot about that part.
So the album starts off with Without Warning. It's a nice and simple building and mood setting instrumental with an awesome effortless solo from George Lynch, and it just kind of sets the stage just right. I enjoyed it.
It's pretty cool. I find it kind of unique if you really listen to it carefully. The clean guitar that comes in is playing a particular riff, and it continues to play that riff and continues to play the riff until the lead guitar solo comes in, and the lead guitar solo, the mix changes, and the riff goes down in the mix, and the guitar solo comes up, and it almost disappears, but it is there. You hear it. If you pay close attention, you can still hear that clean intro riff playing, but it's so far in the background because the guitar solo is right there in your face. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. It's a great solo from George Lynch. So much so, I actually think it's more of a haunting solo. It's a haunting instrumental piece. And it kind of lends itself to the name that they gave it, Without Warning, because it is haunting. But it's a cool way to start an album, and it busts into the next song.
Yeah, I didn't listen to it carefully. I listened to it recklessly. The next track is Tooth and Nail.
That's so unlike you.
Yeah, right. I listened. Sorry. So the next track
I didn't mean you. I know you listened to it carefully.
I did. So track 2 is Tooth and Nail, the title track, and it rips right out of the slow build up of Without Warning. So this track is about 50% catchy chorus and 50% solo, which is awesome.
It's a long solo.
It's a long solo, and it's fantastic. It's about half the song. Don has a bit more of an edge to his vocals than I normally kind of associate with Dokken. I always kind of think of Dokken as these weak, kind of soft vocals. When I hear the riffs, I usually expect it like just some kind of like rasp or something to the vocals, and most of the time it's not there. I would say on this track it's a little more there, and I wish that was more of the norm throughout the career, but at the same time we're specifically talking about this album, right? So he hits the high notes, and it's just enough to fit the song. It doesn't go too much over the top. Any more I don't think would have worked, but it's a good track.
I, I, the way I put George's solo on this, and you can obviously, attest to this. He does his best Eddie Van Halen impersonation, because that's the one thing that not a lot of people realize, that George is up there in age. At the time that this album came out, he is well ahead of his peers as far as age is concerned. He's in his mid to late 20s at this point, where other guys are, late teens, early 20s coming out and playing guitar. He was more of an age contemporary to Eddie Van Halen than he was to, let's say, Robin Crosby and Warren DeMartini. So he had already been playing for quite some time, and him and Eddie had competition between each other in the LA metal scene. So the fact that he comes out on this album, first song out, and he does half that really lengthy guitar solo is all finger tapping, a la Eddie Van Halen, is a testament to one, his guitar playing, two, to the fact that he doesn't give a shit, and I'm just as good as Eddie. Check this out. And it's an impressive and very good solo. I mean, the fans that bought this album and put this in are treated to a brand new guitar hero that they weren't expecting. I mean, it blows a lot of people right out the water. And the song itself is pretty good. It's a catchy song, and like you said, I agree with you. Don is singing a little grittier than normal.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. While at the same time, I don't think it was just something that, like, he's copying Eddie Van Halen or anything like that. He's just a really great guitar player.
Oh, I don't think he was copying him. I think because that was the thing. They were head to head, so they were doing a lot of the same things.
Yeah,
and he was just as smooth and just as good. And I think he was, since he was the same age, there was this thing that, well, Eddie's already made it. You think about it, they're really close in age, and Eddie's already been around. 1982, they're or 1984, they literally put out 1984. This is their Van Halen's sixth album by this point, and yeah. George is now working on the second, So there is a little bit of quote unquote catching up to do, but at the same time, George is just doing what he does because he is an amazing guitar player.
Yeah, I think that's probably it's a valid analysis, but at the same time, it's just one of those things. Like, I don't think he spent a bunch of time thinking about anybody else. I think he's just one of those guys that he didn't get the notoriety that some of the other guitar players in his that are his contemporaries may get. But I think, maybe because of Dokken specifically not being quite as big as some of those other bands, but I think he's a guitar player that should never be overlooked. All right.
Absolutely not.
So, track 3 is Just Got Lucky. It's the second single off the album and starts off with a nice solo. Has a bit slower pace than Tooth and Nail. The vocals are a bit cleaner, but Don puts a small amount of rasp on the chorus, which works. At the midpoint and at the end, Lynch retreads his solo intro, and to great effect, and tying the song together. I don't like it as much as Tooth and Nail, but I enjoyed it.
Just Got Lucky is pretty cool because the solo harmony, the whole thing, the harmony part of the solo is pretty cool because it just mimics itself throughout the whole song, basically. Yeah. And it's extremely simple. It's just a few notes, and it just continues to play kind of over and over again. It is simple in that effect. And I see this chorus lending itself to being a very call and response type concert song. It can easily, because of those little breaks in the song, or those each time that George comes in and does that just that little type of thing, which I really butchered right now.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Anyway, it definitely lends itself to that kind of concert kind of song, and I don't think it was necessarily meant that way, but it works out pretty cool that way.
So trackless. So track list 4 is Heartless Heart. So track 4 is Heartless Heart. This one's a little simpler and slower paced in general. It's got a lot of gang vocals to fill the space and a really generic chorus. I would say, personally, I didn't feel like there was much to speak of here. No solo. Instead, we get, just before the 2-minute mark, it has a heavier gang vocal section with a main vocal melody. This was the first track on the album that I just didn't really like that much. I think one of the strong suits of Dokken is those solos from George Lynch. And I just didn't really enjoy the gang vocal approach here. It was all right. It just didn't do much for me.
It's weird. When I was listening to the song, I was trying to write something about it, and I could not come up with anything to really describe this song. Mm-hmm. The Heartless Heart part in the chorus is very, very basic. But when you were kind of describing what you thought, it came to mind that what this album has and what makes this album good is that it is anthemic. The whole album is anthemic. Each song is its own little anthem, because it's so catchy, because it's so melodic. And this one, it's not the best song on the album by any means. It is, like you said, very basic, and it is meant to be that kind of call and response type thing. Not that, that they're going to do that every single song, but when you got anthems, there's a time and place in the concert where you just, as a vocalist, you put your microphone down or you put your arm down holding the microphone, and the crowd is the one cheering your chorus. The crowd is the one singing along, and it overpowers you. Not that this is a great song, not that they're going to play this song in concert all the time, or maybe at the time they did, but through time, it gets dropped off of the set. This is one of those songs in concert, probably during that year, that has got the crowd cheering or got the crowd yelling "Heartless Heart" back. But that doesn't mean it's a great song. It just means that it's kind of got a cool chorus to it, and that's about it.
There are songs that work better in a concert format than work on an album.
Right.
And I've never been one of those guys that likes the call and response stuff, but I get the appeal in that way. It's just not for me.
It's not you. It's not Chris. It's not Chris K.
So track 5 is Don't Close Your Eyes, or Don't Close Your Heart if you have an early copy with the misprint on it.
Yeah, that's funny.
So the pace picks up again with a nice guitar riff. I wrote Do takes the vocals, not Don. Don takes the vocals down to that lower level to start things off, but at least kind of keeps a small amount of rasp, making up for kind of the lack of power. I mentioned that before. There's a time where I just feel like there's just not that that power behind the vocals, and maybe it's different in a live setting, and maybe the recordings just didn't capture it. I'm not really sure because I've never seen Dokken live, but the main chorus I think is pretty good. Finally, we get another George Lynch solo, which, while being a little simplistic, it fits the song really well. So that's one thing that I notice he knows how to do too as a guitarist, is he does know how to match the solo to the song. Because if you have a really slow song, sometimes you don't need that over the top solo. So, and I don't mean slow, more simplistic, I think is what I meant to say. I wish it was maybe a bit longer, but it adds the spice it needs, and it's pretty good overall.
I like the song. I like the chorus on this song. Definitely like the guitar solo. It's one of these songs, that's got Mick Brown playing all over the place, and then there's a lot of coolness to the song that I like. But it is relatively simple song in that regards. I don't really have much else to say about it because I like the song, and that's pretty much it.
All right. Succinct.
Got stuck there. Yeah, very succinct.
All right. So track 6 is When Heaven Comes Down. It starts off with a nice kind of bluesy riff. The slower, sludgy tempo adds some variety to the album's pacing. And the track has one of the best and most soulful solos on the album. The bass also gets more of a feature here, mostly just because it's used as an accent to the When Heaven Comes Down vocal line.
I like this slow chugger of a song. It's not the best song on the album, but there's something about it because it's a slow chugger, because it just plods along, that is appealing. The bluesiness to it, helps because, people dig the blues, but at the same time, it's not a overtly blues song. And it's slow. It's definitely a change of pace. It brings everything kind of like a reset almost. And I think this is the one that starts side 2.
It does.
So it kind of resets, and it sets up everything else that's coming on the rest of the rest of the album.
Yeah, that's kind of indicative of the time of a side 2 opener, was that it did need to feel like an opener as well. So that leads us into track 7, track 7, Into the Fire, not the Into Fire. You can't tell I'm tired, can you? So Into the Fire is the lead single off the album, and for good reason. The song has power, a great riff, and some of the best vocal work on the album. The track was featured on the theatrical opening sequence to A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, or just, it's not Part 3, a Nightmare on... The track was featured on the theatrical opening sequence to A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors, which in my opinion is the best Elm Street film. Unfortunately, it was replaced on the original VHS release, so if you have that and you don't remember the song, there's a good reason why it was replaced. But subsequently, it was added back in, and the solo is a classic George Lynch, but as always, I kind of wish it was a little bit longer. It's a great track, though.
I like this song. Of course, because it's a single. No, it's a single for a reason. It's a good song. It's catchy. Yes, the solo on it is amazing. I mean, it's just an awesome, awesome solo on this. And again, it's anthemic. Now, this is not necessarily call and response, but it's anthemic, and you want to sing along to it.
It's a sing-along song. It's right. Yeah, it's not a call and response at all. Yeah, and
let me now that you say that sing-along, some of the songs that I said are call and responses, that's more about what it is. It's sing-along. You have these songs, like, for instance, Here I Go Again is a perfect example. That is not a call and response song. It's a sing-along song. And that's kind of more along the term, or kind of more along the lines of what I was talking about.
Yeah, when you get to the chorus, you're singing along with it every time. You may not know the rest of the words of the song, but everybody knows those chorus words.
Exactly. So that's what this song is. And this is a great song. I love this song. This is a very, very good song.
All right, so that leads us into track 8, Bullets to Spare. It's an all right track with a bluesy pedigree, especially the solo, which I'd say is one of the better ones. It's a simple chorus, riff, and lyrics, but it does have some varying drum fills with which is nice, not with is nice. I went Cody Rhodes there for a second. I'd say it's mostly filler, though. It doesn't do a lot for me.
It is a filler song in my opinion. I mean, it's got a nice pre-chorus, but I'm not big on this song whatsoever. I listened to it a couple times over the past week, and I was like, all right, it's there. It's not bad, but it's not a standout. So I give it that much.
If you listen kind of in depth, you can hear the drum work is kind of interesting, but that's the most I can really say for it. So that takes us into track 9, Alone Again. This is the third single off the album, and to some degree, the album's savior. And what I mean by that is it was kind of a slow seller, but 10 months after the album's release, this solo kind of helped it really attain its gold status. Don originally wrote the song in 1975 or 1976. I guess he wasn't quite sure when, but he brought it back out when Electric Records told them that they had to have a ballad on the album, and he reworked it with Jeff Pilson. These are the Dokken vocals I mostly associate with the band, like low distortion, clean vocals. There is more power behind it in that you can hear kind of strength behind his vocals than some of the other songs with the same effect to them. But, it's got a really good solo. It's not one of my favorites, but I get why this was the song that really helped it eventually achieve platinum, but specifically hit that gold status as quickly as it did.
All right, so I disagree with you on the guitar solo. I think this guitar solo is amazing.
Okay, that's not much of a disagreement.
No. I mean, but I think it's just absolutely amazing the way that it brings this song to another level, in my opinion. So in this year, in 1984, you've got a lot of things going on as far as glam metal is concerned, as far as, what eventually would become hair metal. Twisted Sister, Stay Hungry. This album, Dokken Tooth and Nail, Ratt Out of the Cellar. I'm trying to think what else came out in 84. Queensryche's first album comes out this year in 84. There's a lot of things going on in metal, heavy metal,
Twisted
glam
Sister,
metal.
Stay Hungry, Van Halen 1984, Wasp. Bon Jovi.
It is incredible what's
Love
coming
It
out
First
this
Sting,
year.
VOA.
Which one? What was the last one?
VOA.
Sammy Hagar.
Yeah. Animalize from Kiss. Slide It In, White Snake.
I mean, it's a crazy, it's an amazing year.
This is Spinal Tap from Spinal Tap.
So you and I talked about this. We're going to look into doing a series of episodes, 2 or 3, about the 80s, and not just 80s metal, but all the metal that came out in the 80s. But one of the things what I'm getting at with this in regards to this song is that the record company wanted a ballad on this one. This is the point at which ballads are starting to really make a difference in an album. I want to say
at the time it was capturing a different demographic because it was involving the female audience more, and at the time that was a necessity. So for the record sales,
yes. I was trying to get at, however, is okay. So Motley Crue's "Shout at the Devil" came out in '83, so it came out a few months earlier. It came out in late 1983. The single that really put it over the top was "Too Young to Fall in Love," which was their big song on "Shout at the Devil." Then came Theater of Pain in 85. That came out in the middle of 85. And obviously everyone knows that Home Sweet Home is on that album. So there was a string of albums from all these glam metal bands, and they all had that one song that was going to change the album sales. And the point I'm trying to make with this, and I'm drawing this out for unnecessary reasons, is that the MTV really became a huge thing for bands at this point. And so you had to have your visuals. So you had to have the big hair, you had to have the raggy clothes, you had to have all that stuff, or the outfits. And then you had to have some really good rockin' albums, but you had to have that one tune that brought in the ladies. And this song brought in the ladies. And this song is, to me, one of the best ballads of the 80s. It is outstanding. I mean, it's a Don doesn't know what the song's about. He must have written it on a lonely night there when his girlfriend left him or something, because it's just way too much of a heartbreaker to sit there and say, I don't know what I was written about.
I mean, maybe his dog passed away.
I don't think so.
Hey, for some people,
you could be right.
I gotta tell you, I've never had as much heartbreak as when my dogs have passed away.
I get
and
that.
I've been divorced. So
you were happy to get divorced. Anyway, the solo, like I said, on this is amazing, and it brings it to another level. Like I said, it interplays with the pre-chorus and chorus as it goes towards the back end of the song, and that's another cool part about it. So, enough dragging on about this song. It's a really good song, and yes, it definitely made this album at that point.
So that takes us to the final track on the album, Turn On the Action. The album closes with a fast-paced rocker. The guitar riff is pretty cool, and kind of dances around, which I liked. It doesn't stay stagnant. It's kind of going all over the place. The solo takes up a good part of the real estate here. The track honestly could have been about a minute shorter and been more effective, I would say. I think it's around 4 minutes and a half, if I remember correctly, and if it had been just about a minute shorter, it would have been more succinct, a little better. The vocals, I would say, are the weakest part here, repeating Turn On the Action, Turn On the Night over and over again. It's a decent closer, has glimpses of greatness, but doesn't quite achieve it.
It's like in your direction, just over and over and over again.
At least he's got 2 lines here.
Yeah, exactly. This song, I like the song. It's got that fast-paced blues thing to it. But yes, it's definitely the album closer. But it's definitely got a lengthy solo.
It's no Hallowed Be Thy Name.
No, it's no Hallowed Be Thy Name. It's got a great solo, and it's catchy, but, it definitely overstayed its welcome there by a minute or so. So if you shorten the solo a little bit, you just head on out the door, and you'll be done. But it's still a decent song. It's not a bad song by any means.
No, I just, like I said, I think, and I think you misspoke when you said shorten the solo. I think the solo was fine, but shorten the song up a little bit. Like I said, about a minute, cut it down to 3 minutes, I think would have been good.
Well, I mean, what I say by shorten the solo, like if you shorten the solo, that's not necessarily the whole reason to shorten the song. You shorten the song, and so you give it a more succinct solo, and everything would work out better. But you got a long solo, so you drag out the song a little bit longer. It's all like, goes hand in hand type of thing. They're holding hands. Don,
I get what you're
George.
saying. I don't necessarily agree, but I get what you're saying. I think you could have had half the song be the solo again.
Yeah, no, you could have. It's true.
That worked for Tooth and Nail. So overall, I think it's a good album. It's got some moments of greatness, but I wouldn't say it's like a 10 over 10 by any means. This is their second album, so they've got room to grow. The vocals are better than what I would have thought, and there's some good variety, and most of the songs are pretty strong as a whole. I would say, in contrast to the way I felt about Ratt, my impression of Dokken has improved a bit from reviewing this album.
So Ratt went down in your book and Dokken went up.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I think it's valid. I enjoyed, even though I didn't really like the Ratt album that much. I enjoyed doing this because it was something a little bit out of my wheelhouse.
Fair enough. I like that. For me, the album's great. It's one of the first Dokken albums I had. I remember listening to this a lot when I was younger, driving around in my car. So I got my car in 86. Yeah, summer of 86. I had my car. So this is 2 years after this album. So I was listening to this album a lot. I was listening to Dokken a lot. Dokken was pretty big in the 80s, in the middle 80s. Ratt was pretty big. For what it's worth, I mean, I was a big Ratt fan at the time. I remember having one of their T-shirts, and it was one of those bootlegs that you get, and washing it, the shirt began to disintegrate. And I literally began to I cut the sleeves off, and then it disintegrated so much that on the stitching, I tied it together like in a knot. So I had 2 knots on my shoulders to hold the shirt up. I had no sleeves. I had no neck. It was just falling apart. But I loved the fact that it was, an invasion of your, I don't even know if it was invasion of your privacy or out of the cellar. I can't remember. But I had that shirt for the longest time.
I'm imagining you cut off the bottom so it was like a belly shirt, so because it was falling apart.
I didn't do that very often because I didn't like showing my belly too much. I did it a few times in the 80s, but that was just a thing to do back then.
I was laughing because you're like, I got my car in the summer of 86, and I'm like, I got life in the summer of 86.
That is true. So yeah, let's.
So why don't you go first on the big 4 Ratt songs, and I'll go first on the big 4 Dokken.
We've obviously made it very plain as day that Tooth and Nail is our preferred album in this head-to-head battle.
Do I need to say
it? No. All right, so we didn't mention it in the intro, but this is a double Big 4 tonight because we're going to do the Big 4 Ratt songs and the Big 4 Dokken songs. So you want me to do which one now?
So why don't you go first on the Ratt songs, and then I'll go first
songs.
On the Dokken songs.
Okay. All right. So my Big 4 Ratt songs. So there's 3. They're all from different albums, which is pretty cool. But there's 3 from one era and 1 song that is way out of the era that they were big in. So my number 4 song is a song called Eat Me Alive off the Infestation album that came out in 2010. I thought that song was awesome. Or I still think it's awesome. It's a great song. The unfortunate part about that song is it's the best song on the album. The album tanks from there. And it's just like, what happened? But it's a really good song. It is a song that's very much in the style of Ratt back from the 80s. So I'll give it that much. Number 3, song called You're in Love from Invasion of Your Privacy. I believe that was the first single off of Invasion of Your Privacy. Love the riff on that song. Lot to like about that song. It's a little bit more of an up-tempo song compared to some of the other stuff. So that's part of the reason why. Up-tempo and a heavy riff. I like it. Number 2, Lack of Communication from Out of the Cellar. We just talked about it. It is... for what it's worth, for what I discovered tonight, it still doesn't detract from the fact that I really, really like that song. And my number 1 Big 4 Ratt song is Bodytalk off of Dancing Undercover from 1986. just for me, I love that song. I have nothing else I can really say about it. It's a really cool song. If it was, I forget what movie it was featured on. That was from Eddie Murphy.
Shrek.
Excuse me?
Shrek.
No, that's not the one. It was the Golden Child. Okay. That song was featured on. So there you go. I just really like that song.
All right. Well, so my big four, number 4 is The Morning After of Out of the Cellar. That was one of the ones I did actually really like. I thought the pace and the vocal harmony kind of worked for it. Gave it a little bit different dimension than some of the other stuff I heard. My number 3 is Round and Round. It's a definite classic, and there's no denying it. I think in a bubble, this is just an absolutely great track. You really can't take anything away from it. It's Ratt at their best in a lot of ways. Number 2, I liked Best of Me off of Infestation. It was the second track of the album. I think Stephen Pearcy's vocals actually got better with age. He has a little bit more dimension to the way he sings. He sings more than one note, which I like. And you said the album tanks. I actually listened to it as a whole while we were doing this, and I thought it was pretty good.
I got to listen to it again. I say it tanks because, I felt that for me at the time when I first put it on and I listened to it, it didn't grab my attention. This song or Eat Me Alive grabbed my attention, but nothing else grabbed it. And I could be wrong. It wouldn't be the first time. Don't say that out loud. But
that's kind of what we're doing here too, is that we listen to these and give them a second chance, and sometimes our opinion changes.
Absolutely.
So, my number 1 is Eat Me Up Alive, which I think you said it wrong, but I wasn't gonna say anything until it was time for mine.
Really?
Yeah, it's Eat Me Up Alive. So this, I would say, like I said, the band sounds better with this kind of more modern approach. I think Carlos Cavazos' guitar work is really good. His solos are pretty awesome. And Infestation, like I said, I thought it was a pretty good album. For me, the earlier stuff just doesn't resonate, but what I heard here, I kind of ate my own words, because like I said, when I was originally doing this, I thought if I never hear Ratt again, I'd be happy. But once I was looking for my big 4 tracks and I got to this album, I was like, maybe this isn't the album for everybody that's a Ratt fan, but something about it worked more for me.
Yeah, I could totally, I could see that. And yes, I stand corrected. It is Eat Me Up Alive. It's one of those things where...
There's only 100 songs called Eat Me Alive, so I can't imagine why you would get that wrong.
I know, right?
Like Judas Priest has Eat Me Alive. I'm trying to remember. There's another song, Eat Me Alive, that I'm blanking on, but yeah.
Yeah, there's a few of them out there. But yeah, I was just in haste. I always do that. So...
No worries.
All right, so then that's going to bring us to Dokken's big 4 songs. So why don't you go ahead and do those first?
All right, my number 4 is Lightning Strikes Again off of Under Lock and Key. It's a very 80s fist-pumping song, and I'm all about tracks like this. I actually really like this one. My number 3 is Into the Fire. We just spoke about it a little bit ago, but it's linked to my favorite Freddy movie, and it's an awesome track. I'm not the biggest fan of A Nightmare on Elm Street as a franchise, but I really like the first 3 movies, actually first 4 movies a lot. And the third one, even if you're not the biggest horror fan, it has kind of a twist to it. It's a lot of fun. So I know we're not explicitly talking about horror films, but I think Dokken has this history with A Nightmare on Elm Street that they even did a recent I don't know if it was an episode of a show or like a mini documentary or something like that.
You're talking about Don and
the actor
Robert Englund. Yeah,
Robert Englund. Yeah,
I believe they did a podcast, or they were interviewed for a podcast or something like that.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. So there's this connection between Dokken and that franchise. So my number 2 is Breaking the Chains, off of Breaking the Chains. That was probably the first Dokken song I ever heard, and that was from watching VH1 Classic, where they would play all the music videos back then. I don't think they do anymore, which is a travesty. But there used to be these big hour or multi-hour chunks of music videos that I would watch, much in the vein of MTV in its heyday. And I just thought this was a hilarious, music video. There's them literally breaking the chains, but there's explosions every time they break chains off the walls. And Don has his little, it almost looked like a karate gi, and then it turns out it's like a little mini bathrobe when he breaks out of the chains and stuff like that. I don't know. It's campy and it's silly, but there's like this surrealist hallway that they're going through, and it's just one of those things that's like linked in my mind intrinsically. Like I can't forget it. And the song is good. So it all works together, and I just always enjoy it.
The funny thing, I'm sorry to interrupt you. The funny thing about Breaking the Chains is I bought that. I heard that song, and I bought a K-Tel vinyl greatest hits type of thing, like one of those, back then, it was the equivalent to, what's that series that's out now? I can't remember.
You Got Music or whatever?
Yeah, it's something like that. Like, now you've got Music 25. Well, this was more like those things are, heavy metal wonders, or sort of like monster ballads, and
gotcha.
So
it was a sampler.
Yeah, it was a sampler, and it had Breaking the Chains on it. And that's the reason why I bought it. I was like, I have to have that song, because I couldn't find the album anywhere. Because it was, at the time, I believe it was an import. And then when it finally got into the States, it wasn't readily available. But that album also had a Y&T record, a song, Mean Streak. And that's the reason why I know that song. So there you go. There's a little trivia there.
Some of those samplers actually were pretty good over the years. Like the one I had was called Rock and the Train Kept a Rollin'. It was like a 4-disc or something.
Oh, and they're the cheesiest.
They were the cheesiest, and I had gotten it through Columbia House. I think my mom got it for me, and it was like a hit song from every year from like 60 to like 2000 something. I guess it would have been around 2002 or 2003.
Oh wow.
And so it was very eclectic, but I just remember that because it was like the dumbest name for a collection. But going back to my number 1, I picked Dream Warriors from Back for the Attack. Like I said, of the Nightmare on Elm Street films, it was my favorite, and Dream Warriors was the theme song to that movie, and it's just one that's always stuck in my head. I'm not the biggest Dokken fan, obviously. Like I said, this was the first time that I listened to this album all the way through. But there are a few songs. I'm really lisping today, apparently. There's a few
or you're
songs.
Watching something else.
Yeah. So there's a few songs that I really enjoy, and this is definitely one of them.
Cool. We actually have some crossover on this one. So we had one song crossover on Ratt, but on this one we have 2 songs that cross over.
Okay.
And that's pretty cool, because being from the fact that they do have a large catalog, but a lot of the latter day stuff doesn't really make it. Whereas Eat Me Up Alive from Ratt, even though it's actually already 12 years old, that was a really good song.
I just think that Stephen Pearcy gained something with age with his vocals. Like there's a better, like James Hetfield is a good example of his vocals changed with age. Because he went from kind of that raspy young voice to having more of a full adult voice. I think to some degree that happened with Stephen Pearcy, and maybe, I don't know, if alcohol was a factor or smoking or anything like that, because I don't know what he does. This is just a guess, but sometimes that does affect the vocal cords, and he has a more mature sounding voice on those new albums, and to me it sounds actually pretty good.
Fair enough. I like that. All right. Well, my big 4 Dokken songs are as listed. Number 4 is your number 1, Dream Warriors, from Back to the Attack, or Back for the Attack, excuse me. I first of all, Back for the Attack, we're going to talk about that album at some point. That's a great album. It's almost a front to backer if you're into Dokken. I know you're not, but if you are out there somewhere, it's a front.
I wouldn't say I'm not. It's just it's one of those that I just never really listened to him before. So This was a good experience. So we'll see.
There you go. Number 3 is Into the Fire. So that was your number 3 from Tooth and Nail. We just talked about it. My number 2 song is from Tooth and Nail, and it is Alone Again. Like I said, I have nothing I can say that's bad about that song. I love that song. And I didn't go too far I didn't stray from too many albums on this big 4, only because I really like these 2 albums. But my number 1 song is Kiss of Death from Back for the Attack. That has just got a killer riff. It's an amazing way to open up an album. And I love that song. There you go. My big 4 Dokken.
All right.
So I was going to ask you about this. So I think in the future, this is a good idea. And when we have head-to-heads like this with different bands, that we're going to put them, the big 4 kinds of things like this, where it's a double big 4.
Okay.
So that's pretty cool. Instead of knocking our heads trying to figure out which band we're going to drop off the list and say, oh, no, we're not going to do them tonight. So, all right. Well, that is our double big 4 with Ratt and Dokken songs, and that is a wrap on this episode. As always, if you want to hear more from us, click the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app, and we'll be right there for you just about every week.
And don't forget to leave us a message on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. If you catch us on YouTube, be sure to leave us a comment, or if you can, send us an email to debatingmetal@gmail.com. And remember to tune into the next episode where we spark up another exciting metal debate. On behalf of Kenneth and myself, stay safe and always turn it up to 11.
See ya.